Hello, everyone. Um, I had a kind of urge or itch, you might say, to reflect on perhaps the condition of writing on art. And it comes at a time in which, about 2 weeks ago, I facilitated a workshop on writing on your art practice. And out of that, a question emerged from one of the audience. And that was something that I haven't been able to let go of. And what the person said was that, now I'm paraphrasing here, that in the past, criticism was a way in which ideas were being transmitted. Questions about the conditions of art were being transmitted through the art critic who was confronting the artwork in an intimate but also an exhaustive way, not just as an object in the world, um, uh, separate from the context in which it was being displayed, something to be looked at or collected or something that is desired. No, the art critic's job was really to see the artwork in the context that was given it and how that artwork was working in this environment, in this context, in relation to history, in relation to biography, in relation to other artists who have shown in that space. Um, and everything was taken on board, um, even the subjectivity of the art critic. So, in some ways, an artist was getting a lot back, depending, of course, on who was writing and the openness of that writer to bring all those elements into the picture, into the frame of what Craig Owens says, the frame of art. And artists were getting a lot back because I've said this many times, the artists themselves are blind to their own work. They are involved in the process, the building of this object. And they are, in some ways, um, they're risk takers in a sense that they put this thing out into the world without being able to see it themselves. And then they're waiting for responses in the public, what we call the public sphere, um, or perhaps what we don't call the public sphere anymore. This Habermasian or Jürgen Habermasian idea of people coming together in coffee houses, debating in a dialectic manner about society, culture, whatever. Um, so we don't have that anymore. And criticism or writing on art, even the basic idea, the basic activity of writing on your art, um, has not been fostered. So there was the workshop that I facilitated with this question about how ideas were being transmitted through the critic, which I think is very true, for good or bad, you know. Now we don't have that. Artworks are now transmitted through social media in a very different way, not in an intimate way, not in relation to language anymore. It's just about this imagistic culture. Um, and in some cases, artists like this. They like that theory doesn't enter the frame anymore, or even context. That people, the viewer, can see their work separate from the frame of art. and be more involved in the frame, the literal frame of either social media or the literal frame of a walnut frame that separates the artwork from the world, the noise of the world, that background noise that I find when I enter a gallery space, maybe probably the most important thing, how artworks relate to their space, relate to the background, and how artists react to the background noise, not just in the space, but in the world. So there's the workshop, and then I got an email there, promotional email for paper visual, which is a kind of journal that has existed since 2008. And I don't know what issue they are on now. Uh, and I don't even know when these editions of artist writings um, first began. But I know that paper visual has been on the scene for nearly 20 years. And they were very much present when I was an emerging art critic. I had never any real desire to write for them. Um, I always felt that they represented a kind of, um, I think, like, I don't know much about them, but I do recognize the names that write for them. And they have continued on. There's a kind of posse of writers that graduated from NCAD, especially out of art and the contemporary world, um, who a lot of the lecturers there um, became editors of certain editions of this printed publication. So I don't know which issue they are on now. They must be coming up to 20 issues, maybe. Um, but they kind of took over where Circa magazine left. Circa ended in around 2009, 2010 during the financial crash. And at the time when I started to write for Circa, um, and when Circa folded, I started to set up websites and or publications through public funding, like Fugitive Papers with Michaela Cutia, um, and Billion Journal, which emerged out of a blogs, what we called a blog spot at the time. There was lots of blogs. There was Shower of Kunst as well. And I think Billion Journal was in between Shower of Kunst and Paper Visual. It was performative Billion Journal. I say that as the sole, mostly the sole writer and founder of Billion Journal. Um, but it was at a time when I suppose criticism itself was exhausted. There was lots of crisis in criticism seminars, which I was part of, and criticism was changing or transforming into what we now call art writing. Um, J.J. Charlesworth at the time, who was editor at, I'm not sure if it was Freeze magazine, um, he called it belles lettres, beautiful letters. And there was a kind of, it's very like, I suppose, Peter Schaldau, that kind of beautiful writing. Um, but there was a kind of um, exorcism of critique in this type of writing that uh, kind of in American slang we call road shotgun as a passenger to the artwork. And it wasn't really confrontational. And I started off as a critic that was who I embraced or adopted criticism as something confrontational. And yeah, I know over those like 15 years or whatever I've been writing, um, things have shifted in terms of culture and technology and social media and how language is now used today in relation to art. It's all become quite, everything has become kind of like a catalog essay, um, even though they aren't catalog essays. So, and it's closer to literature, maybe. So this idea of criticism as something fugitive, something that you read on a newspaper and throw away, um, kind of died a death. The crisis in criticism really was the eulogy. Um, and I've always been trying to resurrect it in different forms. So it was Billion Journal, Fugitive Papers, Small Night Zine, um, different platforms that I've had to change every 7 years or so. So Billion Journal lasted for 7 years. Small Night Zine is 7 years this year. And on my watch, the condition of art criticism, um, there is no condition anymore. And I kind of weirdly feel like the last art critic. And sometimes I think it's madness writing in this way, in a confrontational way, in this culture about art, asking questions in relation to context, why artists do the things they do. Um, that slogan or that aphorism that Andrea Fraser has, who is one of my someone who look I look up to, especially in relation to institutional critique. And what she says is that what do I, the artist, provide? And I don't really care what the answer to that is, but it is asking a question. It's not about provision. It's not about provision of culture. Um, it's really the artists questioning themselves, whether through language, through them writing on their own practice, or through the work itself. And I think that in a way, trying to describe the art scene is the best way of going about that in the beginning. Because description is something that doesn't bring in the crippling effect that analysis or critique do. Even though, and I don't know who said this, description is a form of analysis and critique, not just in the metaphors you use, which are really telling in terms of how you look at an artwork, how you see an artwork in relation to the world, um, but also um, the critical aspect. When you describe an artwork, you can be really offensive, not just, in our ubiquitous use of similes with uh, our reference. So it looks like this or reminds me of this. So there's always a referential space in terms of language when we confront art. And description, I think, perhaps is the key here. To really describe the artwork, to really give it everything, to over describe, to be absurd in your descriptions. And this is how I set up my workshop on how to write in your art practice, because a lot of artists find it very difficult to write. Um, I know we have AI now, and I'm going to look at that later. I'm hoping to do a series of these, but I'm going to start with description and see where it goes. And if I have enough energy, I'll continue on. Before I continue, I do have another itch now because I'm 7 years doing small night scene, screen printing here in this studio, and it's been really great. But I do, and I've always wanted to create um, a publication. I have the facility here to do that now, but I don't have the writers, the critical writers. And when I saw the paper visual launch of a new publication, I can imagine what it is. Now, I don't think I've ever read one of the editions, but they don't really interest me. Um, paper visual never really interested me as a writer. I was kind of always working against um, what they were presenting as a condition of art writing in the world. And I've always been a writer who's writing against. That's what gets me going, really. Um, I'm always trying to find something, a way into an artwork or an exhibition, um, that allows me to work against the grain. And there was no graininess in paper visual. It was very genteel, it's very literary. It was very concerned about the sentence, and not offending, certainly not offending. Um, and I've always been interested in the power of offense as a critic, whether it's being performative in your criticism, and that means pushing a critique to its end point, where you honestly, and not in a mean-spirited way, you honestly feel, given the context, given the artwork, given the history and biography, given the press release that the artist releases out into the world and gives a space, this press release, this artist statement is always usually the weak link in an exhibition in relation to context, concept. Um, and there's so much there to tackle as a writer, like working against the grain, but never in a mean-spirited way, but perhaps in a performative way. And they may be the same thing in a way, but I think when we start to talk about art, we're already being offensive. There's a perversity in writing on art. Even in description, you can be offensive. As I said, simile, metaphor, analogy, whatever it is, you're using the language, a language that is already working against the grain of the visual, and you're transforming it. You're transforming this visual sensory language into another language, and immediately you're being offensive. It's always, in a weird way, lost in translation. So, yeah, I have a name as well that I'm working on, or I thought up in the last few weeks, and that is Trillion. The Billion Journal came out of the financial crash and the bank bailouts, and this word billion was ubiquitous. It was everywhere in the news media. It even entered my own video and installation work. I did a work called Billion, um, and I named it Billion Journal because I wanted to be kind of diaristic in that it was a journal. It was a time of blogging culture, of Mark Fisher, of there was this energy. There was bloggers writing against bloggers. Um, there was even other bloggers talking about other bloggers on art, writing articles on them. I like it was just a great time. It was, and you didn't know what you were going to get every week. Language was everywhere. It was in colleges. Um, it was online, and it was all free. And I think for me, it was the freedom of blogging culture. Um, but that is no more. So we're in this other space, a Squarespace website space, where everything is polished. Like I used to use this website. It was with Apple laptops. It was called iWeb, and you could build a website on this very easily. But it was great. It was free. All you have to pay for is the domain name. Um, and I remember doing all these kind of funky things online, just collages of images and having fun with it. And that's what I want to get across here is that there's something really fun about writing on art. And that's why I loved it. And especially when you're writing against the grain. And this is really an introduction because I'm recording this on Zoom. Of course, I have a mic here. And I have the free Zoom, so it's every 40 minutes. So how long do I have left? I'm not sure. It'll tell me when there's 10 minutes. But I want to show you something else as well. I've been putting together over the last year all my writings on art. This is a prototype. Um, Fire Art Sale. James Merrigan's Collected Criticism for Art, 2008. And in the prototype, I said 2008 to 2015. Actually, I wanted 2025 at the time. I've updated that and it's something like 500,000 words between 2008 and 2026. And it's mad flicking through it. This is an image when I was invited as part of EVA. I was selected for EVA as a fugitive art critic, and I did a series of interviews. I think it was something called interpolation. I forget the name, the word I used, but interviewed artists as, who were part of EVA, including Mark O'Kelly in his studio. You can find him online somewhere. And you see the plus and the minus here, that's out of billion. And this is from an image from 2010, 16 years ago. And I was on a residency in Red Stables for a year. And that's when, after 3 months of doing nothing, um, I set up Billion Journal. Uh, and in tandem, I started to make work and I got selected for Futures at the RHA. Futures is no more also. And lots of things have shifted, I suppose. But in the beginning, I was anonymous as this anonymous blogger that was writing critical writings. And then I revealed myself on Facebook with this image and continued on for 7 years after that with Billion. So this is quite nice. But that's why I'm, I suppose, doing all this stuff at once, collecting all my writings, putting all the publications together. I'm gonna send them up to Nival at NCID because all this stuff just disappears online. Billion Journal is gone. Fugitive Papers maybe still online, PDFs anyway, and everything just disappears. And so I'm happy that I've collected most of my writing that went out there, including the magazine writing I did in the beginning with Circa or Aesthetic magazine or A&N magazine. There was lots of different magazines in the beginning that I was writing for. Um, and I'm putting them all into this one volume. So I think I'll leave it for now, but why this introduction is really um, to give you a sense of the direction of where I hope to go with this, and especially my own desire to set up a publication that still retains the urgency, the criticism, and all the stuff I've been talking about, the frame of art. And can we go back to that? Can we start to talk about the condition of art making anymore? Does it make sense? Is there too much painting in the world at the moment? I really think there is. Have graduate shows become too professionalized? Is there no objection anymore? I used to do a graduate show review, video review, which was very fun and playful. Um, it was called a shit list. And in that case, this idea of abjection was important. Um, People misread it as, "Oh, this is the shit list," but it wasn't. There's some. It actually the one of the first ones I did um, had a quote from L7, the kind of rock punk band, and they had a song called "Shit List." So I wanted something aggressive, but something fun and playful too, and something that can be misread and misrecognized. And it creates that ambiguity. And we don't have that anymore. We have lots of literature, but we don't have criticism, raw, vital criticism anymore, performative criticism. And I think we have to go back to basics again. And we have to start describing things, describing the art scene for ourselves as well. And I don't think we are aware of the condition of our own making. I think the artists I meet seem to be in this dreamland, and those that aren't in a dreamland are getting all the bursary awards, getting all the exhibitions. You have to be self-aware, but also aware of the conditions of your own making as an artist. And I'm kind of wondering about what is the drive of the artist today. It has to be more than painting. Um, Like I see it in other cities. Like I was in New York recently, and I'm going to touch upon that in the next session of this. I went to the Whitney Biennial, and it was really exciting because there was lots of different things happening there. Painting was kind of dead uh, in its presentation or representation. But there's some really interesting artists like Cooper Jacoby. And this artist, I'm going to end this introduction with this guy, Kimawan Michiwa. He's a Native American, but I think he was a Canadian resident, but he lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And he had a presentation in the Whitney, and I didn't know of him at all. I just was really seduced by his work. It's probably because I'm printing now, screen printing, and I'm more tuned to the qualities uh, of printmaking in a weird way. But he does lots of photo collages, draws and photos, and they're just beautiful, beautiful things. And I bought this book, and this has an artist statement in it. I'm going to start the next session with this. It has an artist statement that I think we can learn a lot from. He's an artist that was outside of whether the LA or New York art world, and but he's making work. If you've ever been to New Mexico, which I have, I drove an RV from Vegas, um, through Nevada, Arizona, down into New Mexico, down to Roswell, and it's probably one of my favorite landscapes, New Mexico. I know Bruce Nauman lives there as well. Lots of artists have left New York and LA for New Mexico. And there's something about that landscape for the artist that I think every artist should experience it. Um, I was writing a piece there called Dear Disappeared, which I performed in Emma in 2023, I think. Uh, and it really got me to think about um, how artists disappear, how cultures disappear, how writing, how criticism disappears. And when you try and hold on to something that's disappearing, what does it become? It becomes kind of desperate, doesn't it? So I think my project has, there's always a desperation in it to hold on to stuff, even though they're disappearing. And yeah, so I'm going to start with this in the next session, hopefully, if I have the energy. And yeah, thanks for listening to this first session of the conditions of writing on art. Thank you.